on the central bank in the genocide ends. Yesterday on my social media feed I watched a video of a baby who'd been beheaded in Gaza. It's a real, actually existing beheaded baby, not propaganda to try and create the excuses for the genocide that followed October 7th, but an actual baby with a future, with parents, who was slaughtered by the Israeli state. One of 100 children every single day since Israel broke the ceasefire who was being killed or injured by the Israeli state. And the horrifying truth, as you know, that's why you're here, is that it's very possible that the funding for the bomb that beheaded that baby, that killed these children, came by virtue of the authorization granted to effectively Israeli war bonds by the Irish Central Bank. And when I raised this, most of you will have seen the video, I raised this last week with Paschal Donoghue, and I pointed out the complicity of the Irish government in this genocide, because they defend the central bank on two bases. One, they say, well, the central bank, they're just doing their job, even though we know they're not doing their job, they're not doing their due diligence, but they say the central bank are doing their job, they're independent. Even if you accept them at their word of that analysis, well, a second thing flows, which is that the Irish government has the ability, and I would say the moral obligation, to legislate to stop the central bank authorising bonds of states that are facing the charge of genocide. And they refuse to do that. And he kind of militantly, steadfastly refused to do that, effectively pointing to the importance of this place for funding, etc., i.e. American investment is what he was really hinting at. But you will have seen that Paschal Donoghue is normally, you know, he's not a boot boy for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael like some of them. He fancies himself as an intellectual. He likes to talk about books. He speaks in polite terms normally. That's Paschal Donoghue. But he was genuinely outraged. Outraged at the use of the term complicit, saying this is horrendously over the top. We're debasing the Parliament, dragging down, you know, the norms of the Parliament, public discourse, etc. He went on this massive rant about how horrendous the words complicit and genocide are. And I have to say, I think the crime of being actually complicit in genocide is a lot worse than any supposed crime of calling out that complicity. But I think it's interesting, like, why did he react in the way that he did? And I think it reflects the fact that for these people to live with themselves, they have to internalise this. They have to say they're right, we're wrong to be opposed to the genocide, to say that they have no choice. And I think it reflects, unfortunately, the fact that what we're seeing is not a lessening of complicity by the Irish state, but a deepening complicity of the Irish state. That's the trajectory of developments, particularly with Trump. So they're complicit, one, we know, in terms of the central bank and their refusal to act up until that point. Two, the passage, now pretty much every week, of munitions to be used in the genocide through Irish airspace. So when this was raised before the last election, every time it was raised, the likes of Micheál Martin, Simon Harris were very concerned about it. They said, geez, this is terrible. We'll have to look into this. We'll have to have some legislation to do something about it. But now it's absolutely commonplace. And there's no talk of new legislation, there's no talk of searching, there's no talk of anything. And effectively, I think their line internally is to say we're not going to talk about those things anymore. We're just going to allow them to happen because we will, you know, sacrifice the Palestinian children for the benefit of not annoying Donald Trump any further. I think they're sacrificial lambs in this, you know, wider geopolitical rivalry between Trump's America and the EU and other states. The same, Chris made the point about the Occupied Territories Bill. If they have their own way, this is going away in all its forms. Again, the promises made during the election were a one-time only thing. They were good for the course of the election, designed to be forgotten and abandoned after the election. And they know that this deepening complicity is going to create deepening resistance of ordinary people. They know that the vast majority of ordinary people are opposed to what's happening and are opposed to the state being complicit in it. So what is going hand in hand with the deepening complicity is deepening repression against the Palestinian solidarity movement. I mean, what happened last week is really something. The arrests, forcible removal, strip searching, cavity searching of mothers against genocide on the Monday, followed by the arrest of a DCU protester on the Thursday, followed by the pepper spraying and arrest of protesters outside the NATO headquarters on Friday. It's hard to believe that is just an accident, decisions made at a low level of the Gardaí, as opposed to a direction coming down saying we're going to repress these Palestinian protests, as is happening around the world. And all of it highlights how what is happening in Gaza is, in like an extremely encapsulated, horrific form, the barbarism that faces the world as a whole. The rise of the right, the radical far right in power in Israel, war, militarism, genocide, and ecological destruction which is being carried out on a mass, deliberate scale in Gaza by the Israeli armed forces. And effectively the world is dragged deeper and deeper into those practices by being complicit. Because if you're complicit, then you need to similarly repress, stop the protest in order not to be exposed and defeated on those issues. And the resistance in Palestine, in Ireland, around the world, contains the seeds of a very, very different world. It's why, like, this is at the crucible, at the crux of the struggle against capitalism, against imperialism, and for an eco-socialist world where people's needs come first. It's why we have to keep up the pressure. They are determined. They are absolutely determined just to ignore people and for people to go away. They want the Palestinian genocide to become normalised the way they've effectively normalised the housing crisis. That's their plan, and we simply cannot allow them to get away with it. So I think what you have done in terms of the focus on the central bank is really powerful because it's very concrete. Everybody can see it. You're allowing the Israeli genocide to be funded by the central bank. So keeping the pressure up on that, joining Mothers Against Genocide outside the Dáil tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And I also agree with Chris about linking this to the struggle to defend neutrality against joining even more actively the Western imperialist bloc. Thank you very much.